4 years ago, I decided I wanted to start a YouTube channel. 9 months ago, I started to make it happen. 5.5 months ago, I launched the channel. I've loved every minute of doing this. It's been everything I would hope it would be, and I owe you a big thank you. If you watched any of my videos, if you subscribed, gave it a like, commented, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know a lot of DIY creators like to put together a compilation of a year's worth of their DIYs. At Jenny's Place started 5.5 months ago. So admittedly, I don't have a year's worth of DIYs to select from, but I do have enough put together a small compilation of 12 DIYs that At Jenny's Place has put out over the last 5.5 months. I cannot wait to share even more ideas with you. The fun has just begun. This Pottery Barn dupe DIY got a lot of compliments, whether it was in the comment section below or from my neighbors and family. Everybody loved this super easy to make mat, and I think you're gonna like it too.
We desperately needed a floor mat, and I loved this one from Pottery Barn. I did not love its $100 price tag. I knew that a trip to IKEA and some spray paint, I can make this for a whole lot less. For this DIY Pottery Barn dupe, you're gonna want to use a mat. I got mine from IKEA, and some painter's tape. Using a measuring tape, find the center of your mat and then lay a strip of painter's tape across that. Then take a smaller piece of painter's tape to mark off exactly one tape space away, and then add your second piece of tape. This is going to give you the parts of the mat that when you paint it, you're going to still be able to see the original color of the mat through. And any of the spaces where you lay the little piece of tape and it's open, that's where the black paint is going to go. And then again, just using a few pieces of tape, double check that you've spaced things correctly so that you don't end up with, a line that starts kind of thicker in one end and ends up thinner on the other side, which I am notorious for. You're going to want to repeat that 3 times, and then you're going to take 2 pieces of the painter's tape to separate the next spaces on each end of the mat, and then again laying that tape, painter's tape, across. Also, little tip, forgot to mention, make sure you wrap the tape around the edges as well. You want it to go underneath the mat. Then I headed out to the garage because that's definitely the best place for me to spray paint, and just quickly press down that painter's tape again really well before whipping out that can of spray paint and giving it a couple of coats. Now, I got a little cocky here and thought I could spray paint a straight line even though I know better. Don't know what I was thinking. I think I was just excited to get this project going. So you can see here that I'm quickly realized that I skipped a step, and I grabbed some paper bags I had hanging around and covered up each end of the mat so that none of the paint gets on it. You'll see a little bit did, but it actually isn't that bad. And then make sure you get the ends of the mat because that's just going to give it that, high-end finishing touch that makes it look like you didn't DIY it.
Favorite DIY has to be my duo throw pillows. I found these at IKEA. They were on sale for less than $4. I think they were $3.97 or something like that. They were huge pillowcases and in a neutral color. And I decided to make them dual-sided. So one side was for fall, and then come closer to Christmas or winter, just flip them over and you had yourself your Christmas pillows.
This Cricut and IKEA DIY, you're going to need to get yourself some heat transfer vinyl in flat black. Okay, to make these pillows even more cost effective, I'm going to make them dual-sided. Each of the designs used in these IKEA and Cricut DIYs can be found on my website. The link to my free library is just below each of my videos. Now, just a few things to remember when you're working with heat transfer vinyl. Make sure that you warm up your fabric before you place your decal onto the material. Always follow the instructions, the manufacturer instructions, for the length of time and the heat that you want to be using when you're pressing down on your heat press. Oh, and always make sure you take your time. Cricut is not a DIY you want to rush through. Trust me. Okay, so this is the the other design that I went with. So we have 2 deer facing each other for one side and then 2 fall messages for the other side. And make sure you measure to get things centered. Okay, here's a little tip. I always get things measured and then lose the spot. So take a little bit of tape it down onto your material so that you know where you want to heat that heat press up. And then when you put your decal down on top, you can then remove the tape before pressing down with your heat press. And there you have your dual-sided pillows. It'll be so much fun to mix and match, and really for $4 a cover and you get basically 4 pillows, that's a steal. I'm dying to know what you think.
Another favorite IKEA DIY were the personalized laundry basket. I'm telling you, this will make laundry fun. Okay, maybe not fun, but a little more stylish.
For this super simple and super cute DIY, you are going to just need some basic everyday vinyl. I'm testing out the Make It Market vinyl a bit right now, but you can use whatever vinyl you prefer. And again, all of the designs can be found at Jenny's Place on my free printable library. But basically for this DIY, I used 3 different types of decals that I created on Canva, each of them having to do something to do with laundry. So once Cricut had done its job and cut everything out, I simply weeded it, applied the transfer tape over top, and then applied it to the front middle of each of the laundry baskets. Then I scraped it really well to make sure that it stuck really nicely, peeled back the vinyl, et voila. Don't you think these would make laundry just a little bit more fun?
This thrifted wood bowl turned wall art decor is one of my favorite DIYs. I featured it on my blog. I featured it on one of the first videos I put up for at Jenny's Place. It was my thrift flip one with the terrible music. This DIY is simple. Anybody can do it. I have found similar wood bowls at the thrift store several times since then, and this sits proudly in our kitchen. I switch it up all the time for every season. I just love it. And because I just love it, I thought I would share it again with you in hopes that you too would love it as well.
And I just took some white chalk paint to really give it a distressed, softer look than the really harsh dark wood. I just went in with a chippy brush, back and forth, getting all the sides, the back, every little detail. Then using some hot glue, I took a picture fastener. I just went with the hook kind and adhered it to the back of the wooden, I don't know, what would you call this? What would you call this? Leave it in the comments below. Tell me, what do you think this is? I truly don't know what this is, but it turns out brilliantly. She says so humbly. Okay, to finish it off, you're going to want to add something decorative to the clip. So you can use a picture, a family picture. I've used this to hold recipe cards, but this time I thought I would just go with something pretty. I grabbed a piece of drop cloth and a stencil that I got from Dollar Tree, I think it was last spring. It has 2 pretty birds on it. And then using a stenciling brush and a bit of decoupage, I put some decoupage on it to begin with so that the paint wouldn't bleed. And then I followed that up once it was dry with a smaller stenciling brush and some black chalk paint in onyx. I believe it's Art Minds, but any black chalk paint will do. And I just filled in the stencil with the black chalk paint, bouncing up and down. I didn't want it to go on too thickly. I sort of wanted it to look kind of worn. And then you see when I'm peeling it back here gently, oh, that's pretty. I think that's pretty. And because I was just using an inexpensive drop cloth from Dollar Tree, I decided to paint on a little bit of decoupage on the ends so that it would prevent them from fraying too badly. And then I just had some clips from lights from Dollarama or Dollar Tree a while back that I just spray painted black, put a little bit of white chalk paint to make it fit in with the rest of the motif, and then hot glued it to the center. And that was it.
I was admittedly a little bit nervous when I decided to put this next DIY outside on our front porch. I don't know if you saw my October videos, but where we live, we had snow in October. So to leave out anything on the front porch is a little risky. However, I can safely say that this DIY lasted the entire season through and still sits in our basement today.
Okay, for this first fall sign DIY, you're just gonna need 3 of those pumpkins you can get from the Dollar Tree. You're gonna wanna remove the raffia bow, the leaf, and the string that's used to hang it. Okay, my dollar store carries these gorgeous decorative rolls of burlap, and I simply traced those out, making sure that the orange part of the pumpkin was facing upwards so that when you decoupage these down, your fabric's going to face the right way. And you're going to want to do this to the back of the pumpkin, not the front of the pumpkin, because you don't want that orange to show through. And then I just used some outdoor decoupage because I'm planning on putting this on my front porch. Even though it'll be far away from the elements, I still think, yeah, it's a good idea to use the outdoor if you're going to be putting this anywhere outdoor. Make sure that you press out any of those air bubbles that might be under the burlap. I also cut out a pumpkin from a bit of drop cloth that I got from Dollar Tree. I chose a different decorative burlap roll for each of the 2 pumpkins that were going to be covered in burlap, and then I gave them each a really generous coat of the outdoor decoupage so that it would protect it on the top. The drop cloth pumpkin, I created a little fall message to be cut out on my Cricut machine on some flat black heat transfer vinyl, and then using my Cricut press, I adhered it to the front of the pumpkin. Now I'm using Make Market heat transfer vinyl. I wanted to test it out. Michaels has been having a lot of great sales with it, and quite frankly, I really liked it. I like both their heat transfer vinyl and their temporary vinyl and permanent vinyl, and I'm curious to see how well it holds out. And then I just removed the backing from the decal. And then to adhere the pumpkins, I used an old wooden dowel that I had, big thick wooden dowel, and using a bit of wood glue, I attached each of the pumpkins to the front of the pole, making them a little cattywampus, not completely straight, with the pumpkin with the message in the middle. And there you go, the fall sign is done.
Moving right along with a few more fall DIYs are the colorful faux stone pumpkins that we made for fall. And you can make them any color you want. Easy, cheap, gorgeous.
Special. But you're going to want to start with just some Rust-Oleum stone spray paint. I went with the lighter color. There is a darker gray color, but personally I find that this just gives it subtle sparkle. Now, to get this to adhere properly to your pumpkin, you're going to want to give it short spurts. Let it dry, come back in, and give it a few more short spurts. If you try to layer this on too quickly, it just gets messy. And here's the finished look. Tell me what you think.
We'll stick with fall just a little bit longer and follow that one up with the Dollar Tree beeswax candle pumpkin. I just love the way that this turned out. It looks so cute, it smelled so good, and it was so easy to make.
For this next fall DIY, you're going to need one of those pumpkin-shaped jars from Dollar Tree that has a lid. You're going to need a stem of their fall leaves, although you only need one of the leaves, and a piece of branch for the stem. This step is completely optional, but I decided to paint the leaves copper. Now, you can use copper chalk paint, you could use just the plain spray paint in copper antique, or you could use the hammered copper spray paint, which is what I went with because I happen to have it on hand. As I was using the hammered copper spray paint, I decided to spray the lid as well to give it a little added texture, and then I sprayed the leaf, and then using hot glue gun, and some hot glue, I glued down the leaf and that little piece of wood for the stem. Okay, now you could stop here and just fill it with candy or put in a tea light, but I decided to get some beeswax from Amazon, this into a candle. I filled my jar twice with the beeswax because that would give me the right amount to melt. And then I dumped that into my double boiler, melted the beeswax down to 100 60 and then left it 150 and then slowly poured the wax into the glass jar until it was full. Grabbing a toothpick once everything had dried a little bit, poke some holes into it around the wick to let any of the air bubbles out, and then voila!
If you have any small worn wood pieces hanging around your wood pile, this next DIY is going to have you looking at those wood pieces in a whole new way. So that's these dirty pieces of wood that I have an idea for.
Okay, so using those leftover wooden bench pieces that I used in my fall DIY, which I will again link just above, I gave them each a quick little wipe, and then I grabbed myself a couple of those stencils that Dollar Tree often sells at around Christmas time. I bought these a couple of years ago and we've reused them like a bunch of times. And then I grabbed a good old crafting favorite, just the Art Minds chalk paint in white. Now there was a couple of motifs on the stenciling packets that would work not just for Christmas but also for winter decor, and who doesn't love a twofer? I mean, really, who doesn't love a twofer? So I decided to go in with the bit of the white chalk paint and a small stenciling brush and use the snowflake motif. And because the wood was so worn, it was important to match the painting to the stenciling to the wood. I didn't want it to look too new and fresh. I wanted it to look worn and distressed. Second piece of wood, I went in with a stencil that was more like a string of berries. There was a lot to already love about how these pieces of wood were looking, but to give it a little extra decorative touch, I decided to go in with some of the twine, and for the one with the snowflakes, I went in with some white yarn with that as well and just wrapped it around the top and a little bit in the bottom. For the one that I did with the berries, I went in with some of the baker's twine in the red and white and another piece of the twine, and likewise just wrapped that around the top and the bottom, adhering it with some hot glue. I'm not sure how I missed videoing this. I'm sorry, my apologies, but I added some pine cones and some greenery to the twine, and voila. If you were to ask me, this is the bench that just keeps on giving, but you let me know what you think in the comments below.
This next DIY didn't get as much attention as I thought it would, and I think maybe it's because I put my video out on Sunday instead of a Saturday. Maybe. I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but I love the way that this pot turned Christmas bell turned out, and I'm hoping that you do too.
I found this ornate plastic plant pot at the thrift store months ago and knew it was going to be something Christmassy, just wasn't quite sure what. And then one day when I was looking at it, it suddenly occurred to me what this pot wanted to be. So to start off with, all that was needed was a little bit of white chalk paint on the entire inside and outside of the pot. Then using a glue gun with a nice big thick head, puncture a hole into the center bottom of the pot. And then I went in with a little skewer just to make sure that all the plastic was cleared away. Next, go in with a little bit of that antiquing wax and a foam brush and apply it all over the pot, making sure to pay a special attention to those ornate areas. You want the dark wax to get into those crevices and the parts that are more higher up on your pot to be the lighter white color. Use a lavette to wipe away any of the extra antiquing wax. Going for that perfect antiqued look. Using some twine rope, I went with a thicker kind. I added a little bead to the bottom of the twine. I painted this bead with a little bit of antiquing wax. It's just a large wood bead that I got in a mixed bag from Amazon. Threaded the twine rope through the bottom of the pot. Have you figured out what we're making yet? Quick! Drop it in the comments below if you have. I adjusted the rope so that the wooden bead sat just inside the rim of the pot and the twine hung out the bottom, and then I knotted the rope on top and then tied that into a loop. Our place this Christmas, we're doing frosty blue and brown glass, and so I had some of these green leaves left over from the blueberry picks used in another DIY video that I'll just link here above. And using my fine tip hot glue gun, I just attached some of those leaves, 4 or 5 of them, to the top of the pot, or the bottom of the pot. Depends on your opinion, I guess. I decided to add some of these Dollar Tree pine picks. They were a bit too long, so clip them down with some wire clippers, and then they'll fit into the arrangement a bit better. Then attach these with a bit of hot glue, arranging them in a circle on top of the blueberry greenery, or whatever, matte greenery you decide to go with. Dollar Tree also had these pine picks that were sort of dark green on the bottom, and they had a bit of yellowy green. I'm not a huge fan of the yellowy green parts, but I did want that darker color on this arrangement, so I clipped those darker green ones out. Added those and some of those white berries that I didn't use in the bell DIY. Instead, I attached those and some more of these frosted pine cones to the top of the arrangement with a bit more of that hot glue. When I looked a bit closer at it, I decided that it also needed a few more of those pine picks between the top of the pot and the blueberry leaves, and so I just used some hot glue and stuck those in and arranged them so that it just looked a little bit fuller. And there you have it, a beautiful antique holiday bell.
This next DIY takes 2 things that a lot of us DIYers are attracted to. Those inexpensive metal Dollar Tree bells that you can find around Christmas time, and embroidery hoops that we DIY thrifters love to collect.
We're just going to use, like I said, those Dollar Tree bells that you can find almost every year, but buy them when you see them because they sell out fast. This year's the pine cone embellishment was just glued to the bell, but this year they've used a wire to attach it, so just unravel that and remove the embellishment. You're going to want some black spray paint, preferably in matte, and you're going to want to give each of these bells a coat or 2 of the spray paint using nice even spray paint layers. It's better to go in light and keep layering than to spray and end up with goops. Okay, you can get these makeup sponges for next to nothing, and they are a crafter's dream. So you're going to want to use those with a little bit of Art Minds antiquing wax, and you're going to want to apply that to your bell. Just pouncing it up lightly. You're going to want some of the black to show through, but basically cover most of the bell with that antiquing wax. And then let that slightly dry. Now next, I'm going in with a little bit of a light silver, but you could really use any light silver color that you like. And then once the 2 colors have dried, you're going to want to grab yourself a little bit of decoupage and a fan brush and apply that decoupage anywhere that you think that rust would naturally form. Okay, this is by far my favorite way and I think the easiest way to recreate faux rust. So you're going to want to go in with a little bit of cinnamon. I just bought some cheap cinnamon from Superstore, and then sprinkle that generously onto your bell. Now personally, I find it best to do this on a paper towel. That way you can later on, after you're done the sprinkling, you can just shake off any of your extra cinnamon into a cup and then use it on the next bell. Once your bell is completely covered with that cinnamon, just go in with a nice dry fluffy brush and wipe away any of the excess. To keep that cinnamon in place, you're going to want to go in with a little bit of Faux Art Select Seal matte finishing spray, both bells a nice light coat, and then let that dry. Now if you find that there's a little bit of clotting along the rim, especially of the bell, just use a little bit of Kleenex and wipe that away. Okay, once you've completely rustified those bells, the next step begins. Super simple. You're just going to want to take some twine. I got mine, I think, from Dollar Tree, and thread it through the top of the bell. Tie that into a knot. You're going to want to do this to both bells, making the rope length a little bit different so that one bell sits higher than the other. And simply using the twine, tie the bells to your embroidery hoop and trim off the ends. Now I had a bunch of greenery left over that I had purchased over the last couple of years at Michael's, and I had these 2 that they were like pine cone pine sticks that just don't work with anything. So I decided to tape these together with just a bit of Scotch tape. And then I used a bit of the Dollar Tree pine picks. And again, I just arranged those around the original pine boughs and taped those into place as well. And then I had some pieces of this ferny greenery that I think I bought during the summer months at Dollar Tree, but they had a bit of like a juniper look to them. So I added those to the arrangement, and again, just simply using the Scotch tape, taped it into place. Lastly, this year Dollar Tree has these white berries with these gloriously frosted leaves, and so I just using some wire clippers clipped those down individually, tucked those into the arrangement, and again, Scotch tape. Could definitely make this arrangement a bit more permanent by using something a bit stronger than Scotch tape, but I plan on reusing these hoops, or at least this one hoop, so I decided to go in with a temporary measure. For a little bit of extra hold, just apply some hot glue onto your tape and then wrap some I went with just thick twine rope and wrapped this around in the spaces between where the two arrangements meet, and then hot glued the end into place. And then I did hot glue this into place at the top of the hoop. And for a little extra security, I also tied this down with a piece of twine. To finish everything off, I went back in with that snowflake wired ribbon from Michael's, and again, using a little bit of hot glue, attached the ribbon together. I actually felt that this looked a little sparse, so I decided to beef up what was already there with the pine cones, and I added some pine cones that I had on hand with just a little bit of hot glue. And then to give it that little extra festive touch, Dollar Tree has these sparkly frosted pine cones, and you just, using your wire clippers, just clip them off, unwrap the wire around them, and then adhere them with a bit of hot glue to the arrangement. There you have it, a second holiday decor piece using old discarded embroidery hoops.
This next DIY idea was part of what was by far my most popular video this year, and that was my Christmas basket video. Let me show you how you can make yourself a really creative gift card holder anybody's gonna love.
Okay, this idea brings a unique basket to a whole new level. Start with an old hardcover book and some chalk paint. And I just went in and gave the book, I think it was like 3 coats of chalk paint, and then let that dry completely. Okay, and this is now where we get a little funky. And I take out your X-Acto knife and cut out the center pages of the book. Now, I didn't really want to spend a lot of money on Cricut vinyl with this, so I just went in with one of Dollar Tree's really inexpensive Christmas stencils and a little bit of chalk paint. And on the side binding, I used another one of the stencils to add some ornament images. Because inside, we're going to stick an inexpensive gift card holder with a gift card inside. You get to decide how much money you want that gift card to be, and then some Hershey Kisses in the Christmas colors, topped it off and filled the rest of the book in, and then I simply wrapped it with some ribbon, added a couple candy canes, a little touch of greenery, and there you go, a unique way to give those boring old gift cards.
Last but not least, this was by far the most popular and also my favorite DIY of the year. Well, 6 months. And that would be my wooden spoon wall art piece. I used that wooden bench again from our backyard, so it had sentimental value. I also included a couple of wooden spoons that I'd used over the years to do some baking and cooking with my kids, and a few other wooden spoons I found along the way. Let me show you how you too can easily make this gorgeous dining room wall piece.
Next DIY, I had to use a combination of thrift store and dollar store wooden spoons. Okay, well here are the 3 wooden spoons that I managed to find that were already used. The burnt one is the one that I started with. That would be mine. No judging. And then here are the ones that I found from the dollar store. And then grab your Art Minds antiquing wax, or any antiquing wax. I just happen to have a lot of Art Minds on hand. If there's one thing that all old wooden spoons have in common, it's that they have some sort of crack at the bottom of the spoon part. So to recreate this look with the dollar store ones, just grab a hammer and beat that spoon. Now this is going to be used to antique the wooden spoons that came from the dollar store. I wanted to go for different looks on each of the spoons, so some of them I applied the antiquing wax quite liberally, whereas some of the other spoons I just left as is, and a couple of them I just applied some wood oil. To make the spoons look a little bit older on some of them, I went in with a little bit of sandpaper and just scuffed them up a little bit more. Now, my hubby doesn't throw anything out, and that is very fortunate because scrap wood pile was a plank of tongue and groove that we had used way back when we first renovated our house, like way back. But it was going to be perfect for this project. So I just grabbed some Rust-Oleum chalk paint and a nice big fat chippy brush, and then going in with the dry brush and a little bit of the white chalk paint, I applied a very thin, worn looking coat of paint to the front of the board. A little treasure found in the wood pile were these old wood slats that came from a park bench that we used to have in our backyard. They were so old and grungy and chippy and perfect for the frame. So I just cut them down to size. Now I knew that when I put the frame together, two of the new freshly cut sides would be showing, and since the rest of it was really old and grungy looking, I wanted to make sure that the ends had a similar look. So to recreate this, you're just going to want to go in that hammer again and beat the ends of the wood pieces that are going to be showing. And with a little bit of antiquing wax and some folk art oatmeal chalk paint. And then using Kleenex, I just dabbed a little bit of each of the paints on, back and forth, until I kind of created a look of mossy, worn wood. When I was done, I had hubby look at both ends to determine which one was the old cut and which one was the new cut, and he couldn't even tell. Using the brad nailer, I put 3 nails into each end of the frame to hold it together. Next, I went in with a little bit of weld bond and a paintbrush, and I applied it to a thin strip of wood that we had in our wood stash, and I used the wood glue to adhere these long, thin pieces of wood to the inside of the frame so that I would have some place later on to attach the backing to. So in total, 4 strips of wood were attached to each end of the frame. And then these strips of wood with the weld bond was held into place with some clamps and then left to dry so that it adhered properly. The weld bond had dried completely. It was time to go in with a little bit more, this time on the top part of the thin strips of wood. Using the paintbrush, I just put a nice thick layer, but carefully, thinly, so I didn't get it on the frame on top, and then put the tongue and groove backing inside, pushing it down so that it laid flatly. Then I put a couple of big clamps on each end and added a few bricks and a few more clamps in the center to make sure that it didn't buckle and that everything laid flat. I left that overnight so that the weld bond could cure completely, and then I carefully arranged the wooden spoons on top of the frame, on top of the tongue and groove. Once I had the spoons spaced exactly how I wanted them, I went in with a little bit more of that weld bond and painted it on with the paintbrush, and then added a bit of hot glue. Hot glue will adhere the spoon to the tongue and groove really quickly, whereas the weld bond will take a little longer to dry, but will give you that long-term fix. And there you have it. I am simply in love with this fall decor.
Well, that's it for this year's roundup. If you enjoyed those, make sure that you subscribe, give me a thumbs up. If you hit the notification bell, it'll let you know the next time I upload. Oh, and you might enjoy these.